Hello, my name is Travis Bean, and welcome to Cinema Beans, where I just kind of expel my thoughts about movies onto the world. No editing is required. This is this unadulterated view of me as I stumble my way through trying to explain why I do and don't like movies. Today's an interesting one. I decided to tackle a new movie, a movie probably not a lot of people have seen, and I thought it'd be interesting to talk about this movie on YouTube. I don't know how many people have discussed it on YouTube or have even really written about it, other than major publications that have seen it at film festivals. But it's a movie called Babysitter that's now available on Mubi, M-U-B-I. It's a streaming service that's mostly independent, not mostly, it's like all independent films. It kind of specializes in that like, sort of festival film. And there's a lot of cool new movies you can find on there that you wouldn't normally find anywhere else. I would strongly encourage you to check it out. You can watch it on there or rent it somewhere else. But it's a very interesting movie that I had an interesting reaction to because I watched this movie called Fresh a couple months back. A lot of people probably know that movie a little bit more. It is directed by, I am blanking on who it's directed by, which is terrible. I should have had this ready to go. She's a new director. She has an interesting name, Mimi Cave. I knew Mimi, but I didn't want to just like guess the last name. And it wasn't a movie I particularly enjoyed. I didn't make a video about it or anything, but I did write about it on the website, so you can go check that out. I should have the movie pulled up that we're talking about, Babysitter. And my reaction to it was just that it's a movie that it's about a woman who starts dating this guy, and she doesn't know much about him. And then she soon finds out that he's like this, not a serial killer, but he kidnaps women and stores them in these prisons in his home and cuts off pieces of their flesh and sells it to guys who want to eat women's flesh. It's kind of an overt commentary on it's both overt and I can't exactly assign like what it's trying to say about society, but you kind of get it, right? This idea that like men are like feasting on women, that women don't feel safe in the society, that their bodies are being abused and used by these men. It's all there. My biggest problem with the movie was that it never really fully committed to its aesthetic. Like it is ultimately a horror movie, but it's never really that scary. It's never really that gruesome. It's oftentimes humorous and playful. And it just never, in my opinion, that the aesthetic never finds a balance or a rhythm, and instead just kind of comes off flippant because it's, it's so all over the place and like trying to be humorous in ways that like I didn't think it ever really worked. And the movie just never really, I didn't think it was necessarily a terrible movie, but it never grabbed me in the way I think it was trying to. And thus its point was never really fully reached, and I didn't glean a lot of insight from it. Now, since then, I think right before I watched this movie, I had started reading a book called Chick Flicks, which I have right here. Theories and Memories of the Feminist Film Movement. It's a book I had dipped in and out of a little bit for a while, but I've decided recently to kind of go full bore on it and read it more in depth because I was really into feminist films for a little bit. Maybe closer to my earlier days of being a cinephile. I was kind of taking in everything. I was watching a lot of shorts from female filmmakers, like Maya Deren and Marguerite Duras, like these really kind of household names in the feminist film movement. But feminist film theory was not something I have really read a lot of, which is kind of ironic that I would, consider myself like somebody who loves watching feminist films, but I don't read about the women writing about the movies made by women. Like it seems like an essential part of it. So that's why I kind of started delving into this book. And I have another book I'm going to be reading called Thinking in Images. But B. Ruby Rich wrote this book, and she is kind of like the premier name in feminist film theory. And I got to this chapter that she wrote, which I guess became kind of her defining essay. It was called In the Name of Feminist Film Criticism. And it was kind of at this turning point in her love of feminist film and kind of realizing what it was and what it meant to the film movement to cinema, period. And she had a really interesting section. Basically, the whole theme of this essay is, well, I'll read this little bit right here. She's a very scholarly writer, so it's not exactly the most digestible. So I'll explain it after I read it. The effect of not naming is censorship, whether caused by the imperialism of the patriarchal language or the underdevelopment of a feminist language. We need to begin analyzing our own films, but first it is necessary to speak in our own name. And there are several more quotes I could read in here that kind of get at this point, but essentially what she's saying is that, we can go beyond movies. Movies had always been dominated by men and been made by men. Stories themselves, narrative structure itself, storytelling tricks and methods, like everything, technique, it's all been defined by men for forever, because men have always been at the helm of any artistic movement. They've kind of like held the power. You can look beyond art. Obviously, men have always kind of dominated society, and we're having this reckoning now where more and more women are becoming influential artists and gaining more power in society and nabbing these really important positions in society and having more of a voice. But even in the 70s, when B. Ruby Rich wrote this essay, women were barely part of film, and they were just beginning to define their own language of film, because forever storytelling and filmic language had been defined by men. So when we watched a movie, the set of vocabulary we use to define that movie and understand that movie was a language dictated by men, because that's all we knew were movies made by men. And it creates a really interesting tension, because a woman's not a man. She sees the world differently, has different sensibilities. So when she makes a movie, a different language is required to analyze and understand those movies. It's a really kind of simple, universal truth that is impossible to ignore and deny, yet it's something that's really uncomfortable and forces us to kind of reevaluate how we look at certain movies and how we understand certain artists. It requires a societal adjustment, and that's tough. That's not easy to do. So I kind of had that in mind. That thought's been kind of burning in the back of my mind ever since I watched Fresh and had a negative reaction to it. That I expect the movie to be gruesome and to be hard hitting and to use the horror genre in a specific way. But the specific way I'm looking at was a way entirely defined by men. Now, with all this coming full circle here, bringing all this together, I can understand all of that and be aware of it and still not like the movie, of course. I am who I am. I have the sensibilities I have. I know what I like. If I don't like the way Fresh tackled its subject, I have every right to feel that way. But I think it's important to recognize that there is another side to the equation, or to the coin. There's more to see, there's more to understand, and it's not necessarily about liking and not liking. I could understand Fresh on a different level and try to appreciate the language in which it's threaded. Because it's made by a woman. Maybe it's tackling issues in a way I inherently won't understand, because it's completely different than the worldview I have, or a worldview I'm trying to come to understand as I, try to progress and become a better person and a more open person. So all that in mind brings me to Babysitter, which I think is a great movie. Everybody should watch. It's about a guy who goes out on a night in the town, and they're at a boxing match or a UFC match, and in the aftermath of this match, they're kind of running around, they're flirting with girls, they're drinking, and one of the guys kisses a news anchor who is standing in front of them, kind of commentating on the chaos of the moment, and he kisses her on the cheek, and she has this negative reaction, whoa, step back, don't do that. And the news picks up on it, it becomes a story, and everyone starts demonizing this guy. And so what he decides to do is to write a book of letters to all the women he's wronged in his life. And the person kind of pushed to the side in all this is his wife, who has just had a baby and is kind of trying to adjust to motherhood and figure out her life. But I think this becomes a thrust of the movie, more importantly, trying to figure out her life in this changing society. The movie, I had a bit here that I wrote about it that I think kind of nicely sums it up. The director, I don't know her name off the top of my head, Monia Chokri. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I knew her because she was in a bunch of Xavier Dolan films, who was a fantastic Canadian filmmaker you guys should check out. But I think sorry, I'm taking so long to find this. I think I would know it. But okay. While I can't, this is ultimately the point I was trying to come to with, talking about Be Ruby Rich and Fresh and all that, is I went into Babysitter thinking I need to be a little more open to what the movie is trying to do. Because at first it was the humor of the movie, kind of the pace, the rhythm. It's very different than what I'm used to. It's a little more akin to what you would find at a film festival, but it was still pretty out there and like in your face in a way that took some adjusting to. But once I kind of locked into what the movie was doing, I really started to appreciate its aesthetic. And ultimately, the insight I gleaned is that Babysitter details a perverse predicament a woman experiences in a progressive society. It can feel both lonely and overwhelming for all the men in your life to try to learn a new language, something I'm going through. Inherently, a societal adjustment places all the intention and focus on the men making the adjustment. And they're all trying to one-up each other in their wokeism. In the end, the attention drifts away from the real problem and the people actually affected by the real problem. So it's kind of an interesting take that this movie that's about members of society who are trying to progress and trying to become better and trying to listen more actually are listening a little less. And the focus is placed on the men who are trying to change. And that's kind of the sick irony of the whole situation. The attention should be on the women who are trying to create change, but it requires men to change for this change to happen. And that can feel very conflicting, and there's a lot of tension there, and it can make people feel lonely and overlooked, overshadowed. And that kind of becomes the message of the movie. Like, you see these people trying to maneuver through that chaos of a changing society. All this change that is for the better, like, it's good, but it's also tough. It's also not easy to be a part of. You can also feel lost in all of that. And I really like the way the movie navigates those points and plays with those points, and ultimately creates a really interesting commentary on society and takes this really humorous look at how ridiculous all of that is and how crazy it can feel to be a part of all that. The final shot of the movie, and I don't think I'm really giving anything away here. If you really are worried about spoilers, I guess you can turn the video off now. But this isn't like a plot spoiler or anything. The last shot of the movie is a bunch of younger women skating by Nadine, the main character of the movie. And it's like, there's like a dozen young women skating by, and they're just happy and like laughing, and they don't seem to have a care in the world. And to me, what I took away from this moment is that the people who have to go through those big changes society must experience, that's a tough battle, but it's a really necessary battle so you can make way for the next generation, make things easier for them, create a society where these things don't require such a major adjustment. They just are. This is the way things are, and this is what we expect of people. And it kind of brings a quiet maturity to the proceedings. Like it takes all the chaos away and makes it feel just like this is how society works. Like the slow ticking of the clock, like the slight changes that are made that create something vast and vastly important, and it's and it's cool how the movie does that. I really enjoyed it. On my 2022 rankings, I have it ranked at number 8 right now, above Deepwater and below Kimmy. I have kind of tussled with the idea of moving it up higher, but right now I have it where I have it. And then on my all-time movie rankings, that you can find both of these rankings on the website, filmcolossus.com. They're kind of sticky to the upper right corner as soon as you log in, so you'll find it. I have it ranked at a number 125 of the 199 movies I've seen this year. Kind of surprising that it's in the lower half now that I think about it, but I've watched a lot of really good movies. It's probably, and I've rewatched a lot of movies too. So of new movies I've watched, it's probably in the upper half. If I really looked at the entire list and took out all the movies I've seen before. But yeah, 125 right now. In the pretty good section of my bracket. I've thought about moving it up to the very good section. I might still, the more I think about it and contemplate it, it might make that jump. But for now, I'm kind of just going with my gut and have it down here. 125. And yeah, that's it. If you've seen the movie, tell me what you thought. Comment on any of my points. And please check out the movie in any way you can. Mubi is probably your best way to get it. And there's a bunch of great movies on there. So I would recommend that personally. And okay, that's all. Thanks for watching. I think in the next video, I'm going to talk about Everything Everywhere All at Once, a movie I do not like that everyone else seems to love. So that'll be fun. Okay, thanks for watching.